In the next 12 minutes, your English will be transformed. Discover the simple, hidden secret to breaking free from stuck grammar rules and unlocking smooth, automatic fluency.
Talk English Podcast.
English podcast for learning English.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast, The Mastery Path. I'm John, your host. Our mission here is to help you move past that frustrating stage where many of you are stuck, the Intermediate Plateau. You know the grammar, you've memorized loads of vocabulary, but your fluency and speaking flow still haven't reached that ideal level. This is where the learning curve seems to flatten out, and progress becomes agonizingly slow. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of hosting a very special guest, Lily, a second language acquisition expert and a specialist in designing output-driven language programs. Lily, thank you for making the time to join us.
Thank you, John. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. This intermediate plateau is such a crucial turning point in any learner's journey. It's often where people lose motivation because they feel their effort isn't yielding results. I'm eager to share some practical strategies to leap over it and revitalize their progress.
Absolutely. Today we're going to dive deep into how you can transition your conscious grammar knowledge, the stuff you learned from books, into an automatic, unconscious speaking skill. This is the ultimate path to true fluency, and it's a process most traditional classrooms simply don't have the time to cultivate. Before we dive into our deep-sea conversation, if you enjoy the content of this podcast and find it beneficial, please support us with one small click right now. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our future vital tips, and please leave us a comment at the end. Your support is instrumental for the growth and visibility of this podcast.
That's absolutely right, John. We pour a lot of effort into making these episodes both educational and practical. If this episode gives you even one useful takeaway, please share it with your language learning friends so we can all progress together.
Lily, let's start with a profound question that plagues every intermediate learner. Why can a student ace the most difficult grammar tests, achieving near-perfect scores on written assessments, yet struggle immensely to string together a simple, coherent sentence fluently when actually speaking? Where does this fundamental mismatch between knowledge and performance originate?
That's an excellent question, John, and the answer lies in the distinction between two core concepts in the field of second language acquisition: linguistic competence and communicative competence. Linguistic competence is what you develop through formal study. This involves accuracy, which is your explicit knowledge of grammar rules, syntax, word order, and morphology, word formation. It's essentially your ability to analyze a sentence and determine its correctness based on rules. This knowledge is primarily conscious. You can articulate the rules you're following. It's the editor in your brain checking for errors. Conversely, communicative competence is the ability to use the language effectively, spontaneously, and appropriately in real social contexts. This is fluency, the capacity to produce language at speed with minimal hesitation without needing to consciously calculate rules. This is implicit and unconscious knowledge, much like riding a bicycle. You don't think about the physics, you just do it. The common dilemma for intermediate learners is that their mental energy is disproportionately spent strengthening the linguistic side. However, for real-time, spontaneous conversation, we require an unconscious database of pre-assembled language. Your mind needs to draw on ready-made lexical chunks, prefabricated phrases, and common collocations instead of painstakingly assembling every single word. This drastically reduces the processing time required for speech production.
So, essentially, when we are engaged in a conversation, the conscious brain is entirely preoccupied with managing the message, the information, the tone, and what I want to convey. The unconscious brain is simultaneously supposed to be handling the grammar and structure. If that unconscious part hasn't been properly developed, the entire system experiences an immediate cognitive overload, causing the learner to stutter or freeze.
Precisely. When you are continuously thinking, should I use the present perfect or the simple past? Or where does this adverbial phrase go? You are engaging a serial process. I formulate the idea, then I consciously apply the rules, then I speak. Fluency, however, demands a parallel process. As I formulate and speak, the implicit system automatically generates the grammatically correct structure. This state of automaticity is virtually impossible to achieve without massive exposure to authentic language and unconscious repetition. A key principle we'll discuss.
This academic distinction is absolutely crucial. It clarifies the common frustration.
Now that we've grasped the root cause, let's look at the solution. The first and most fundamental method to cultivate unconscious knowledge is guided input. I'm not simply talking about randomly watching any English language content. At the intermediate stage, we must move past casual consumption and adopt a strategic content consumption strategy. The new vocabulary approach. You must graduate from memorizing isolated words. Your focus should shift entirely to learning language chunks or collocations. Internalize full phrases such as "it goes without saying," meaning it's obvious, or "the whole premise of the argument is," meaning the foundational idea is. This strategy allows your brain to store language as large, pre-assembled building blocks, rather than constructing sentences ab initio from the beginning. This dramatically reduces the cognitive load during real-time speech.
So, how exactly can our listeners strategically guide their input to maximize unconscious acquisition?
Firstly, adhere to the rule of interest. Any content that is dull or irrelevant to your life will fail to create the necessary neural pathways for memory. But the second, more critical point is comprehensible input CI. This is content that you understand approximately 95 to 98% of. If you understand more than that, you learn nothing new. If you understand much less, you feel overwhelmed. We need that 2 to 5% challenge, the I+1 factor, to signal to the brain that there are new rules or patterns to acquire.
So, they need to stop struggling with content that is too far beyond their current level, which often leads to what you called burnout.
Precisely. That only results in cognitive fatigue and ultimately leads to giving up. A prime example is using podcasts like this one, where we employ more sophisticated terminology and complex sentence variations, but we ensure the conceptual clarity remains high. We are pushing the linguistic boundaries without overwhelming the core understanding.
That's a powerful point. What about the quality of the sources?
Yes. Avoid relying solely on simplified news or content specifically labeled for learners, as these often use unnatural, stilted language. Instead, look for podcasts or videos that discuss your genuine interests, history, philosophy, current affairs, and are made for native speakers. This is essential for absorbing the natural prosody, intonation, and stress patterns of English, which is vital for sounding fluent, not just correct.
Now, a critical point for our listeners who are keen to operationalize these concepts and turn them into practical skills. You can download the full PDF transcript of this podcast through the link in the description. This resource is gold. It includes a glossary of specialized vocabulary we've used, quizzes focused on the complex grammatical structures, like nominalization, you've heard, and targeted exercises to boost fluency. I urge you to download it immediately to ensure you move from just listening to actively internalizing. Lily, this discussion about communicative competence, the balance between skill and knowledge, really brings to mind a significant psychological concept that applies universally, especially in personal relationships. Often, achieving fluency is like improving a relationship. It requires a proactive understanding of individual responsibility.
That's an insightful analogy, John. Communication, whether in language or in personal bonds, is always a shared space. But success fundamentally hinges on individual effort and perspective.
Exactly. This leads me to a very important video recommendation. I encourage our listeners to take a break after this podcast and watch the following video on our channel. This video explores why the widespread notion that responsibility in a relationship should be exactly 50-50 is a harmful illusion. It argues persuasively that for true stability and growth, each individual must adopt 100% responsibility for their own actions and contribution. This mindset is absolutely transferable to language learning. You cannot expect 100% fluency, the desired outcome, from merely a 50% effort, e.g. passively reading rules. You have to own the process.
That shift in perspective is transformative, John. The focus should indeed be on the quality of contribution, your level of personal commitment, rather than the simplistic divisibility of the task.
And that brings us perfectly to the second, equally vital pillar of our solution, the active component. A quick reminder, if this segment of the discussion has been beneficial to you, please ensure you've subscribed to our channel and left a comment on this podcast. Your engagement helps us identify which topics resonate most deeply with our intermediate audience and allows us to continue bringing you this high-quality, specialized educational content.
We've extensively covered guided input. Now, we must address strategic output. The major pitfall at the intermediate level is that learners either avoid speaking entirely due to fear or they practice in isolation, like talking to themselves, leading to the fossilization of errors. They solidify their bad habits because there is no external correctional feedback. We require sophisticated methods that rigorously link the output back to correct native input. The primary method, retelling and paraphrasing. This is a step up from basic imitation or shadowing. At the intermediate stage, the exercise is highly cognitive and involves consuming a piece of complex content, audio, video, or text, pausing the source material, then reconstructing the entire overarching idea, the conceptual framework, using your own established vocabulary and grammatical structures in your own words. The goal here is not repetition, it is spontaneous retrieval. When you are forced to re-explain a complex concept, your brain is challenged to instantly select the fastest and most effective syntactic structure and lexical items from your growing unconscious store. This builds your linguistic muscle memory.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it. Instead of rote repetition, which is passive, we are engaging the improvisation skill and forcing the mind to be creative and resourceful under pressure.
Exactly. Furthermore, when paraphrasing, consciously attempt to employ structural sentence variation. For example, rather than the overly simple structure, it is important to notice the different types of input. Challenge yourself to use an advanced technique like nominalization. The importance of noticing different input types cannot be overstated. This means it is very important. This ability to manipulate language structures is the hallmark of advanced fluency.
This structural agility is precisely what differentiates a fluent speaker from someone who simply knows a lot of words.
Absolutely. And the second crucial output method is targeted interaction. If you secure a fluent speaking partner or tutor, avoid merely engaging in aimless free talk about trivial subjects. Instead, use your time strategically. Ask them to challenge you on a specific complex topic you've recently consumed input on, or have them play the role of an interviewer asking critical questions. This structured conversational framework, scaffolding, forces your brain to retrieve and employ the new complex vocabulary and structures that you've been acquiring.
This brings us directly to the application of language in context, the skills of pragmatics, the appropriate social use of language.
Precisely. You need to observe and imitate how native speakers phrase a tentative disagreement, how they interrupt politely, or how they use hedging language. For example, I suppose, perhaps, I'm inclined to think, These nuances, the socio-linguistic skills, are utterly absent from grammar books and can only be absorbed through observation and strategic practice with a native speaker.
We want our listeners to participate in this discussion. Please answer this question in the comment section. What is your biggest emotional or psychological barrier to starting to speak, output in English? Is it the fear of making a public mistake? Or do you struggle with the lack of access to suitable, high-quality speaking partners? Your detailed responses will help shape our future content and focus. Lily, before our time runs out, let's address two significant challenges that can derail intermediate learners: overcoming the initial inhibition and the constant struggle to find quality, authentic resources.
For finding resources, you must get creative. Beyond general searches, use platforms like YouTube or specialized podcast directories that allow you to search based on academic disciplines or niche interests. Look for documentaries, university lectures, or technical discussions, content that challenges your conceptual understanding while providing authentic, high-level vocabulary. This ensures your input is both relevant and linguistically rich. For overcoming inhibition, the fear of speaking, you need to fundamentally shift your perspective. You must accept that mistakes are not failures. They are necessary signals for progress, markers of acquisition. Every error you make, when corrected or noticed, serves as an opportunity for corrective feedback that helps refine your implicit system. Embrace the awkwardness. No one in history has achieved fluency without making countless, sometimes embarrassing mistakes. View the act of speaking as a learning opportunity rather than a performance review.
That's a profoundly helpful psychological reframing. So, to summarize, we've covered the 2 essential pillars for successfully navigating and breaking the intermediate plateau: guided input to deliberately build unconscious knowledge, and strategic output to actively utilize and refine that knowledge.
In closing, I want to leave you with this maxim. Language acquisition is a marathon, not a sprint. Your consistency, your daily manageable input and output, is vastly more important than the intensity of a sporadic effort. And once again, I strongly urge you to move beyond passive listening. To ensure you integrate this knowledge into your skill set, download the PDF transcript containing the detailed grammar notes, quizzes, and specific exercises for this episode from the link in the description. This is the practical tool you need to transition from an intermediate learner to a truly fluent speaker.
Lily, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and these comprehensive strategies. It's been an invaluable session.
It was truly my pleasure, John. I wish all your listeners continued success on their mastery path.
And to our dear listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end of this extended episode. Our final but most critical call to action. If this podcast has moved you even one step closer to your goal of fluency, please show your support by liking, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with at least one friend. Your engagement is the fuel that keeps this educational engine running. Finally, for those who want to conquer the deep-seated psychological fears that are often the silent saboteur of progress in language learning and in life, do not miss our highly recommended video on the channel. This video will provide you with the mental tools to embrace necessary change and step forward with greater confidence in all your endeavors. Until the next episode, stay committed to the mastery path. Goodbye.